Hello, greetings. Bungie just put out the TWAB this week at Bungie. It is 4 in the morning here in Australia, but I'm excited because apparently this is a big one because they talk about abilities in this and sandbox update. So we're going in. I'm on my meds, high off my ass. Let's do this. This week at Bungie, we take a look at every grain in the abilities sandbox. Hello and welcome to another sandbox-focused TWAB. If you're new around these parts, you may be asking, what's a sandbox? Well, it's complicated. It's split between the weapons you use, the armor you equip, perks and mods that you hunt for, and the enemies you face. Let's be real, the Destiny 2 sandbox is broad. Last week we focused on the weapons sandbox and what changes are planned for December 7th. This week we're taking a pass on the abilities your Guardian possesses. Think supers, melees, grenades, class abilities. I highly recommend you grab a glass of water, maybe even a snack, because we've got a pretty lengthy update for you to read. Before we dive into the details, it's customary to have a TWAB intro discussion. What's going on in the realm of Bungie and Destiny? Keep it short, shall we? What have we got here? 30th anniversary is out on December 7th. 19 days from today. In-game, still plenty to do between seasonal challenges, trials, occasional Iron Banner, vendor reputation, god roll hunting, and more. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the States, and many of us will be taking some time to rest up and spend time with family. Such expect a very light TWAB next Wednesday. Alright, sandbox time. Let's get to it. There are buffs, there are nerfs. There are tuning levers that we've recently unlocked with back-end changes. There are clear separations between PvP and PvE and more. There's a lot going on here, so don't feel bad if you scratch your head wondering how these upcoming changes will feel. If you find anything a bit confusing, please sound off with questions. We'll clarify as we can on our forums and social spaces. With all that preamble out of the way, I'll finally shut up and pass the mic over to the team. Alright, new legends will rise. Kevin Yanes here to give you a quick intro before I hand off to fellow designers Eric Smith and Mike Humboldt. A few TWABs ago, I gave a brief roadmap leading towards our 30th anniversary, the Witch Queen, and beyond. A new roadmap update will likely not happen for some time after this, as the team heads down on more than a few initiatives. One of the initiatives you're going to hear about today is an adjustment to ability Regeneration. Okay. As a whole, and a refocusing of Crucible gameplay and weapons. Okay. The team has touched almost every piece of abilities content with this release, and I'm fairly convinced that this will be our biggest balance patch ever. Holy, okay. Earlier this year, we heard overwhelming feedback that the Crucible has been largely dominated by ability usage. Players felt that the abilities were firing off too frequently, too much potency, and too little investment. At its core, Destiny is a game about space magic, so any adjustments to our abilities must be made with care. We believe the changes we have made will keep the heart of what makes Destiny abilities fun intact, while shaving down some of the excessive cases we've seen out there. I feel it's important to reinforce here that part of Destiny's strength is that it's a live game. We're able to iterate and improve the game as time goes on. This means that we're building new foundational systems, like the ones you'll read about today, with that in mind. We're giving ourselves more balancing knobs to tune than we've ever had before, and we hope you'll start to see why that's so important as you read on. We hope 30th anniversary shakes up the sandbox in new ways and gets you excited for even more changes coming in the Witch Queen. Team will likely go heads down for a bit as we still have Solar and Arc to 3.0ify, alongside other insanely cool initiatives. Arc for Hunters, please change. The team takes player feedback seriously, and as Destiny players ourselves, we have intrinsic fire to keep improving things for everyone. We hope what you've seen over the last year reinforces that this team is both about competitive balance and making incredible dope new shit. Ooh, they swore. How rebellious. Okay, now I'm going to fade away into the ether as Eric Smith takes us to what's coming next. Now look, Bungie, I love you, but I should do Void first. Like, I think Void, for the most part, is in a really good place, but we'll see. Eric, in 30th anniversary, we've changed the way ability cooldowns work. Okay, this is getting dangerous. Up until now, cooldowns across individual ability types, grenades, melee, class, and super, have generally been identical between all abilities of the same time. For example, all the grenades in today's Destiny 2 share the same cooldown time, with the exception of Stasis Grenades. This shared cooldown means that all grenades need to have roughly the same power output because they have the same time cost. Oh shit. For the 30th anniversary, we've made a change that allows us to tune the cooldown of each ability separately. Okay. This gives us a new knob to turn when balancing abilities that are too powerful or not powerful enough. Okay. Now that we have a new system in place, we've done a cooldown tuning pass of all the subclass abilities in the game, tuning each ability's cooldown time against its power output. Oh, this is gonna be weird. We've also tuned ability outputs and assigned cooldown times accordingly. Okay. Best example of this might be the new Flux Grenade. Take a look. Oh, Flux Grenade increased the base cooldown from 82 seconds to 182 seconds. Increased attached detonation damage from 150 to 250. One shot kill in PvP. Increased damage versus PvE combatants by 15% on top of base damage increase. All right. Removed projectile tracking. Added a small amount of aim assist. Increased throw speed by 117%. Now sticks to all surfaces. As you can see, the Flux Grenade now has a very long cooldown, but it's a one-shot kill in PvP if you manage to land it. It also hits harder in PvE. As a reminder, Flux Grenade is currently only available to Hunter Arcstriders. Now here's an example in the opposite direction. Okay. Firebolt Grenade. Ooh. Reduced base cooldown from 82 seconds to 64 seconds. Okay. Reduced damage per bolt from 90 to 65. Increased damage versus PvE combatants by 15%. Okay. Firebolt Grenade has a low cooldown time, especially at tier 10 discipline. Also has low damage output. These kinds of varied cooldowns and power outputs should make the game feel more dynamic and give more depth to build crafting. To make build crafting around cooldowns easier, you'll now be able to see the base cooldown time of your abilities when selecting them on the subclass screen. On the character screen, you'll see the actual cooldown time of your abilities as affected by your equipped ability and armor stats. A couple things to note about cooldown times in the UI. The base cooldown time is actually the cooldown time at tier 3 of the relevant armor stat. Strength, discipline, etc. This is because the system technically penalizes you for tanking your stats below tier 3, in which case your cooldown would be longer than the base. We're looking into updating this to be more intuitive in a future release. Cooldown times for class abilities are not currently displayed due to a technical issue. We plan to fix this in a future release. Okay. We've been calling this variable ability cooldown system. We think it's the beginning of a big change for the Destiny 2 sandbox. Variable ability cooldown system, VAX. Very close to a certain Fallout term. It's a foundational change in preparation to move the light subclass over to the subclass 3.0 system Stasis currently uses. For the 30th anniversary, we're using it to change the cooldown of nearly every ability in the game. One of our design goals this year was to reduce the amount of ability spam in the Crucible and put the focus back on gunplay. To this end, we've made ability cooldown times longer on average than they were before. We don't want the PvE experience to suffer for the sake of PvE balance though. So we've tried to compensate where possible. For example, we've increased all grenade damage versus PvE combatants by 15% or more. This should make grenades feel like bigger power moments than they do in today's game. Melee ability cooldowns haven't been increased quite as much as grenade cooldowns. Some of the less aggressive melee attacks have lower cooldowns than before. Class ability cooldowns have generally increased. The changes vary depending on what ability is equipped. Okay. Excited to see how these changes feel once they hit the live game. We're monitoring, adjusting quarterly in future releases. And I'll pass to Mike Humboldt to talk about big changes to super cooldowns. Ooh, okay. Into the fray. Since Destiny's launch in 2014, super energy gain has been almost entirely passive. Your intellect stat dictates how much your super regenerates, with a few other elements like orbs of power, armor and weapon perks, and defeating targets as active sources. This system worked well for a long time, but has issues that have grown more obvious as the game's evolved, and overall player skill, especially skill in evaluating how to play around their character build, has increased. Example, in high-stakes game modes like Trials of Osiris or Survival, where each life is precious, passive play becomes more common as players sit back and wait for their supers to close out a tied game. In general, we want the most efficient way to gain super energy to be actively engaging in combat. That doesn't mean you need to win every fight, but we want you to try. To get us close to the goal of making a big change to the system, super regeneration will still have a passive component scaled by your intellect stat, but at a significantly reduced rate. On top of your passive regeneration, you will also gain super energy by dealing and taking damage to or from opponents. Here are a few key goals for this new system. In PvE, super uptime should be relatively unchanged from the live game, if not slightly higher. Okay. We are pretty happy with the frequency of supers in most PvE content and don't want to make big changes right now on that front. Everybody should get at least one super in a 6v6 match that goes to the score or time limit as long as they engage in regular combat. Expression of power, through using your awesome space magic, is a core part of what makes Destiny special, and we're not looking to change that. We think the cadence of supers in 6v6 modes is slightly too high, but we don't expect a dramatic change in super uptime for most players in playlists like Troll or Iron Banner as a result of these changes. Supers should be less frequent in 3v3 modes than in live games, where 2 supers per match is a fairly regular occurrence. These modes are about expression of player skill. We want that skill to be primarily about team coordination, positioning, intelligent use of your abilities, and first and foremost, gunplay. While there is absolutely skill in outmaneuvering active supers or playing around super uptime, supers in general are purposely designed to be accessible power fantasies for all players, and that inherently creates asymmetry that we need to account for in more competitive play. Primary weapon play should have a noticeable benefit in super energy regeneration. With this new system, we are scaling energy gains up and down granularly. I can't say that word. Granularly? Based on the source of the damage, both outgoing and incoming. Outgoing primary weapon damage has a significant higher return of super energy per damage point than any other type of damage. Different supers should come online at different times in a given match, and your super of choice should have an impact on how quickly it regenerates. To reiterate what we mentioned above, we have always lived in a world where nearly every super in the game shares the same cooldown. Regardless of their efficiency, that's a typo, Bungie. Regardless of their efficacy in a given game mode, now that we've made the foundational change to differentiate cooldowns per individual ability, we want to address the super o'clock issue in the Crucible where 3 minutes into a match, 12 supers are simultaneously popped and chaos ensues. We also want to open up build crafting space, where your super's cooldown time is an important element in your decision making beyond how high you want your intellect stat to be. To that end, we've separated supers into cooldown tiers that affect both the passive regeneration rate as well as the damage-based regeneration rate. This tiering was primarily influenced by each super's kill potential, where most one-off supers are unlikely to wipe a team or a room of combatants, but a long-lasting roaming super can and should have a trade-off as a result. Taking into account the general potency of the subclass kits where possible, for example, later on we'll discuss Shatterdiver and changes when making which impact how effective the Revenant Hunter is in the neutral game. Ooh, causing us to shift some of that potency to the super's uptime as a result. Okay. It's also important to stress that this is the first iteration of the system where any given super performs to the recharge rate tiers will change over time as we continue tuning. These are the super regeneration rate tiers that we're launching with on December 7th. Tier 5, Fastest Regeneration, Well of Radiance. Interesting. Tier 4, Blade Barrage, Silence and Squall. Tier 3, Shadow Shot, Burning Maul, Arc Staff, Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash. Tier 2, Golden Gun, Chaos Reach, Nova Warp, Storm Trance, Daybreak, Sentinel Shield. Tier 1, Slowest Regeneration, Spectral Blades, Fist of Havoc, Hammer of Soul, Glacial Quake, and Winter's Wrath. As Kevin and Eric mentioned, this sets up future as we move towards Subclass 3.0 system. As example for the 30th anniversary, things like Deadfall and Mobius Quiver, variants of Shadow Shots, will share the same cooldown tier, but with the Void 3.0 launch in February, they could exist in different tiers based on the potency. Yes, that needs to happen, because the two hammers are not equal. The top tree and bottom tree, the Sunbreaker and the Siegebreaker, are not, they're not like the same. Same with the Fist of Havoc. Okay, with the Void. By the same token, Ward of Dawn, which is currently tied to Sentinel's shield cooldown, moved into the tier 5 group as a standalone super with Void 3.0. Okay. I was wondering about that. Let's talk about non-super abilities for a moment. In the 5/27/2021 TWAB, Kevin shared our foundational pillars. The role we want abilities to play in PvP combat sandbox. Quick refreshers where we want to be. Weapons are the primary ways players engage with combat. Non-super abilities accentuate or augment the combat but should rarely solve an encounter by themselves. Abilities have clear strengths, weaknesses, and counterplay. Build crafting is rewarding within the moment-to-moment combat loop of Destiny. We're not there yet, and the general ability uptime in the Crucible is too high for the current potency, and it's difficult to understand when an opponent will regain an ability while using it. Some of that uptime comes from passive cooldowns, but many of our outliers also come from elements of the build crafting systems that have previously been unified in ability, energy, returns between PvE and PvP. With the 30th anniversary, we've taken a pass at a significant number of these elements across subclass perks, armor mods, and exotic armor pieces. We tuned PvP energy regeneration separately from their base PvE values. We are not changing. Okay? That's made very clear. It's underlined. For our pillars, we want build crafting to be rewarding, but in its current state, combat the combinator. These are some hard words today. I'm just too high for this shit. The combinatorial nature of these perks and items leads to an unsustainable ability energy economy that diminishes weapon play in PvP. For this tuning pass, we've focused primarily on items that feed into self-perpetuating loops of ability energy gains. Here's a brief list of effective items. Okay, here we go. Subclass neutral game perks. These perks have had their ability energy regeneration reduced by roughly 50% in PvP. Okay. Targeted perks can even activate out of combat with a single button press, or those that were returning amounts of ability energy with significantly out of band. Okay. Whisper of Shards, Stasis Fragment. Okay. Arcweb, Storm Cooler Warlock. Okay. Rising Storm, Storm Cooler Warlock. Okay. Ionic Traces, Stormcaller Warlock. Okay. Electric Surge, Stormcaller Warlock. There's a lot of Warlock stuff here. Aftershocks, Striker Titans. Inertia Override, Striker Titan. Benevolent Dawn, Dawnblade Warlock. Practice Makes Perfect, Gunslinger Hunter. Dark Matter, Voidwalker Warlock. Okay. So Whisper of Shards is, I think, the fragment that gives you grenade energy back when you shatter. Arcweb is obviously the grenade that chains between. I can't remember what Rising Storm is. Ionic Traces are the ones that come towards you. In Middle Tree, Storm Warlock. Electron Ostatic Surge is when allies are nearby your rift and abilities recharge quicker. Can't remember what Aftershocks or Inertia Override is. Benevolent Dawn is the buff you get from Mid-Tree Dawn Blade when people go in your healing grenade or stand in your rift. Practice Makes Perfect is when you're continuously hitting precision shots on the Warlock. Hunter. Read that one. Dark Matter, I can't remember. I think that's energy regen on Mid-Tree Void. Subclass and super perks. These perks scale down energy returns as you get kills in your super, i.e. the first kill while in super returns more super energy than the third kill. Yes. These perks often result in supers being able to roam the map for much longer than is healthy for the game and mean that a victim can frequently die to an active super. Yes. Respawn on another side of the map and be killed by that same super again. We've rescaled this energy refund or decay more aggressively in PvP so that the minimum energy refund is reached roughly twice as quickly. No change has been made to the refund decay against PvE combatants. So Everlasting Fire, which is bottom tree Dawnblade, and Trample, Striker Titan, which is also bottom tree. Exotic Armor. Each exotic blow had a custom tuning pass focused on their ability energy return in PvP. Frosties no longer stack multiplicatively. Fuck, I can't speak. In PvP with other regeneration buffs is now an additive scaler. No change in PvE. Okay. Art of Inmost Light. Ability energy regeneration scale is reduced by 50% PvP. Yeah, okay, that's quite big. Your work, so activating multiple abilities will now reliably result in multiple empowered stacks. Thank you. The stacking behavior was previously a bug, but seemed like a good opportunity to promote it to a feature. Controverse Hold. Duration of the grenade regeneration buff is no longer random between 1 and 4 seconds and now a fixed duration of 1.75 seconds. Reduce grenade energy regeneration scale by 50% in PvP. Previous average duration due to waiting was 1.71 seconds, with 1 second duration being most common. This should improve the exotic consistency across the game with a lower return in PvP. Okay. So that sounds like a slight buff in PvE to always be consistent in its return. Cool. Doomfang Pauldrons reduce super energy gain on activation when an opposing player is killed by a void melee by 50%. No change in PvE. Shinobu's Bow reduced grenade energy gains on hits versus players by 66%. No change in PvE. No more spamming Shinobus. Crown of Tempest. Grenade melee and super energy regeneration scalar buff. Duration reduced from 7 seconds to 4 seconds in PvE. PvP. No change in PvE. Stag. Reduced class ability energy refund on shield break by 50% in PvP. No change in PvE. That's pretty big. It looks like they don't want Warlock players to have their Rift up as much. Armor mods. In general, we've reduced energy returns from these mods by roughly 50% in PvP, depending on the number of copies of the mod you have slotted. Melee kickstart, grenade kickstart, utility kickstart, perpetuation, bolstering detonation, focusing strike, bomber, outreach, dynamo, distribution, momentum transfer, and impact induction. Okay. This is a big foundational shift for us. We expect to do a lot of tuning as time goes on. So as always, we'll be on the lookout for how things are feeling across the game. We'll adjust accordingly. Now I'll throw it back over to Eric for some spicy details and more ability tuning changes you can expect with 30th anniversary. Fuck, we're only halfway through this. Dang, this is long. In case you haven't caught on yet, the list of ability changes we're making at 30th anniversary is massive. We've touched nearly every ability in the game in some small way. We won't go over the full patch notes because it's mind-numbingly long. Let's take a look at some of the more provocative balance changes. Stasis Crystals. Stasis Crystals do a lot. Top of freezing players when they're created. They also block line of sight, block movement, and act as explosive barrels. It's all a bit too much for PvP. With this release, Stasis Crystals will now slow players instead of freezing them, and they'll do much less damage to players when they detonate. As far as PvE is concerned, Stasis Crystals will freeze combatants, and we've increased Stasis Crystal detonation damage versus PvE combatants. That's cool. Looking at the numbers, it was almost always better to shoot directly at a combatant instead of a crystal near a combatant. This change should help crystals better live out their explosive barrel dreams. Stasis Crystals. While forming, Stasis Crystals now slow nearby players instead of freezing them. Still freeze PvE combatants while forming. Increase slow freeze radius while forming from 1.75 meters to 2.6 meters. Reduce crystal detonation damage versus players by 55%. Increase crystal detonation damage of, I can't say detonation. There we go. Damage versus PvE combatants by 60%. Increase crystal detonation radius from 6 meters to 8 meters. That's huge. That is so huge that they don't freeze. Because you can't, like, that Shatterdiver's dead. It's dead. I mean, it'll still be good, like, to blow up, but it's going to be counterable. All right, Hunters. Dodge. In order to meet our goal of less ability spam in the Crucible, we're reducing how often Hunters can dodge. No, I really don't like this change because I just love chain dodging on my Hunter. This better not be changing in PvE. Gambler's dodge is getting hit the hardest here because it can completely circumvent melee ability cooldown times. Also completely changes the Hunter's silhouette in PvP, making it very powerful. In addition, Hunter dodges will no longer break projectile tracking, meaning it's less of a get out of jail free card when a tracking rocket and other slow moving projectiles flying towards you. I wonder if this means that Warlock Tickle Fingers will now be able to get them, because if you didn't know, dodging just breaks the tracking from a Warlock. I mean, they'll probably get you after, but you can use it to dodge around corners and stuff and get away. Hunter dodge no longer breaks projectile tracking. Marksman dodge. Tier 10 ability in cooldown increased from 11 seconds to 14 seconds. Base cooldown unchanged at 29 seconds. So it's getting a 3-second nerf at tier 10. That's Marksman. That's the one that reloads though. Gambler's dodge. Tier 10 mobility. Oh shit, what did I just do? Tier 10 mobility cooldown increased from 11 to 18 seconds. Woof. Base cooldown increased duration from 29 seconds to 38 seconds. That's pretty significant. That's pretty significant. Revenant, you guessed it, Stasis Crystal changes detailed earlier mean the Hunter's Revenant's Shatterdive will now almost never kill a full health Guardian. Thank you. Shatterdive may still kill if the Hunter is using Whisper of Fishes, Touch of Winter, and the target is in the very center of all 6 crystals. Okay? It's been incredibly rare in our playtesting. I think we can all agree that Shatterdive was too powerful. No shit, Sherlock. We tried a number of fixes over the past few releases. The truth is, as long as the Stasis Crystals froze players, and the Shatterdive shattered players, it was going to be too good. But it's not all rain clouds and puddles for Shatterdive hunters. The increase in Stasis Crystal damage versus PvE combatants makes Shatterdive a great choice in PvE. Sorry guys, I have a pimple in my ear and it's fucking me up. Top of that, we're increasing Shatterdive damage versus frozen combatants by 100%. Have fun melting frozen monsters. Shatterdive, much less lethal versus players due to Stasis Crystal changes. Much more lethal versus combatants due to Stasis Crystal changes. So players obviously are the players PvP. Combatants is what we refer to as enemies in game. Increase shatter damage versus frozen PvE combatants by 100%. So that's pretty big. It already slapped pretty hard, so that's incredible. Grim Harvest Aspect. Increase fragment slots from 2 to 3. Ooh, okay. It's a buff. Top tree Arcstrider. This change to combination blow melee was made possible by our variable ability cooldown system. Okay. Previously, top tree Arcstriders were basically required to use Gambler's Dodge with this tree. We hope this change will make this ability viable even if you're using Marksman's Dodge. Combination Blow. Reduce base cooldown duration from 96 seconds to 15 seconds. Cool. That's really interesting. So before you had to dodge near something to get your melee charge back, but now it's super fast charging, which is great because they couldn't do this before because all the melees were the same cooldown, so they couldn't change it. This is actually really cool. Bottom tree Night Stalker. The Venetian Smoke melee has low damage output but high utility. Our data shows that this subclass tree is struggling in PvP, so we've decided to increase how often Pathfinder hunters can go invisible. Venetian Smoke melee reduced base cooldown from 96 to 75 seconds. Pretty good buff. Titan Shoulder Charges. In an effort to put the emphasis back on gunplay in the Crucible, we've decided to reduce the number of abilities that can one-shot a full health Guardian. As such, the Titan's 3 shoulder charges are no longer one-shot abilities in PvP. Oh! To balance this out, we've made the shoulder charges quicker to activate, easier to hit with, and travel farther. We've also increased their damage in PvE. In our experience, they're still powerful in PvP in combination with short-range weapons and when used as a movement tool. Wanted to curb shoulder charges' potency now that we've tuned down shotguns as their current counter. We're monitoring the data and feedback and adjusting accordingly. All shoulder charges, no longer one-shot players. Sprint activation time reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1.25 seconds. Increased range from 5.5 meters to 6.8 meters. Okay. Targeting cone width increased by 10%. Okay. Increased damage versus PvE combatants by 25%. Shoulder charge kind of needed a little help. It's good that it no longer one-shots. It activates a bit quicker on the sprint. It goes further. And it's going to hit a little bit more reliably, which it really needed. The amount of times that I would try to use that thing, it would just whiff. In situations where it shouldn't have, it should hopefully help it a little. Seismic Strike, Arc Shoulder Charge, reduced AoE damage from 90 to 40. Now blinds enemies in the area on hit. Increased base cooldown from 82 seconds to 90 seconds. Okay. So reduced damage, now blinds, slightly increased cooldown. Shield Bash, the Void Shoulder Charge, reduce AoE damage from 90 to 40, that's in line with Arc. Increased base cooldown from 82 seconds to 90 seconds, that's also in line with Arc. I hope they make the suppress on that actually work, because it works for me 1 out of 5 times. A lot of time it just won't suppress. Hammer Strike, Solar Shoulder Charge. Solar Shoulder Charge. That's really hard to say. Solar Shoulder. Solar Shoulder. Solar Shoulder Charge. Solar Shoulder Charge. Reduce direct impact damage from 170 to 120. So that one still hits harder. Increase base cooldown from 82 to 90 seconds. I wonder if Peregrine Greaves will let you still one-shot a Guardian in Super. That's my big question. Barricade. Even with the rally barricade changes we made in Season of Lost, using this ability during a firefight, still a risky proposition. Space out cooldowns with 2 barricades to make the choice slightly more interesting. Carrying Barricade. That's the big one. Increase base cooldown duration from 37 seconds to 40 seconds. Slightly longer, okay. Rally Barricade. Reduce base cooldown duration from 37 to 32 seconds. It's not going to beat blocking something off. Like it's going to have its niche uses, and I would love to see it used because it's funny to me. But it works sometimes, but like, you know, mode like Trials, blocking something off and getting a res, etc. is just so good. Behemoth. We agree with general community feedback. Behemoth could use some love in PvE. We're hoping these changes to Diamond Lance make this aspect a top tier PvE pick. Okay. That sentence has got me excited. Shiver Strike is getting a big damage buff during the Glacial Quake Super. The Whisper of Change fragment buff here is also very spicy and should help Behemoth survivability in pinnacle PvE activities. Whisper of Change can be used by all Stasis subclasses, but making crystals is kind of Behemoth things, so we're listing it here. Diamond Lance. Increase fragment slots from 1 to 3. Thank you. Now spawns a Diamond Lance upon killing a PvE combatant with a Stasis weapon. Spicy. Killing 3 players with Stasis weapons in a single life. Spicy. Killing an enemy with a Stasis ability. Spicy. Shattering an enemy. All of that is very spicy. I like that. I love Diamond Lance as an ability. Pairing that with a Stasis weapon kill. Huge. Aga's Scepter. Huge. Peace Bond. Huge. That's great. Because pair that with the what's that? Headstone perk, where getting a headshot makes a crystal, and then shattering that, you're gonna be making so many things. Shiver Strike, increase Shiver Strike damage 1 Glacial Quake by 50%. Okay. Whisper of Change, increased damage resistance versus PvE combatants from 25% to 40%. Whoa, that's huge. I already run that a lot with, I get people to run that when I do help them with runs, and I run Stasis Warlock with turrets because it makes survivability huge. But that's insane. That combined with things like Stag is going to make like GMs a lot easier. This class is Bottom Tree Striker. This class is absolutely dominating PvP this season, so we're turning it down a notch. Changes we made to Fist of Having the Season Loss helped Top Tree as intended. It also turned Bottom Tree into a monster. On top of that, the Stasis nerfs and other changes we've made over the past few releases created a power vacuum that Striker Bot filled with extreme prejudice. We hope these changes put Striker Bot, stop saying Striker Bot, back into the pack instead of towering high above everything else. Knockout. Melee lunge, range, and melee damage bonus now deactivate after a melee kill. Oh, it should. Trample, super energy gained from Fist of Havoc light attack now decays to a minimum amount of 3 PvP kills, down from 7. Huge. That should make it not be able to run around the map twice. Frontal Assault melee, increased base cooldown from 82 to 106 seconds. That's a hefty increase. Fist of Havoc, heavy slam radius reduced from 8 meters to 6 meters. Bottom tree only, because top trees is pretty bad. Top tree compared to bottom tree in Super for PvP is just abysmal. Warlock, uncharged melee. Warlocks have been losing slap fights for too long. Yes, up until now. Warlocks haven't been able to melee back to back as quickly as Titans and Hunters. No more! With the 30th anniversary, Warlocks were able to melee just as quickly as Titan and Hunters. Huge. We're also removing the 1 meter range extension Warlocks received to compensate. Thank you. We still think the idea of each class having unique qualities to the melee is interesting, but we want to do it in a way that won't cause one class to consistently lose slap fights. Maybe someday in the future. Uncharged melee. Reduced melee range from 5.5 meters to 4.5 meters. Now matching the Hunter and Titans. Reduced suppression time after melee. You now melee back to back at the same speed as Hunter and Titan. Military Voidwalker. In our effort to do away with one-shot abilities that are frustrating to be hit by, Handheld Supernova is also getting the shoulder charge treatment. That's right, Handheld Supernova no longer one-shot in PvP. To compensate, it now travels farther and pushes enemies back. Okay. They've also increased the damage of Handheld Supernova and Nova Warp versus champions and boss combatants. Cool. They increased the damage in the Caesar loss, but felt like they could use even more juice. Handheld Supernova, reduced damage versus players, now deals 150 damage max, increased damage versus champions and bosses by 30%, increased projectile range from 12 meters to 14 meters. Now push the targets away from the Warlock on detonation. So a lot of people will, if they're good, they'll kill you still, because it will push you back and they can get a shot off after, maybe quicker than you, your aim might be thrown off. Nova Warp, increased damage versus champions and bosses by 30%. Shadebinder. We feel the Shadebinder is in a pretty good place with a couple of exceptions. 1. Winter's Wrath is still the best super for shutting down other supers, and it's not even close. Yep. Winter's Wrath must now freeze and shatter other supers twice to kill them. I thought they made this change already, but I must have been dreaming this. As a general rule, roaming supers shouldn't be able to one-shot other supers. 2. The Penumbral Blast melee is too difficult to land against PvE combatants. I don't think it is. When we made the ability harder to land in PvP, it had a negative effect on the PvE experience, increased the proximity detonation radius against PvE combatants to make it easy to land. I'm all for that, but I didn't really have issue with it. Occasionally I'd whiff, but yeah. All 3 Stasis Grenades now have different cooldown times, so we made a change to Bleak Watcher to avoid a situation. It was always best to use the grenade with the shortest cooldown time. This results in overall cooldown increase for Bleak Watcher, which fits an incredibly high power output. Sad about that. I love the turret. It'll still be good though. Winter's Wrath. Reduce shatter pulse damage versus enemy supers. Must now generally freeze and shatter all supers twice to eliminate. Penumbral Blast. Increase proximity detonation radius versus PvE combatants by 100%. Bleak Watcher. While Bleak Watcher is equipped, all Stasis Grenade charge at Glacier Grenade rate. Okay. That's all for now, folks. I think we've covered the big stuff. There are a bunch of other small changes coming in the 30th anniversary. We'll cover everything else in the official patch notes. As you can see, the team is hard at work adjusting Sandbox globally. We hope the picture we're painting here reinforces the statements we've made in the past. Sandbox is going to evolve alongside the game. As we hit year 5 and beyond, this statement will become even more true with new and exciting changes coming with Subclass 3.0 experience. Stay tuned for the patch notes with the 30th anniversary goes live on December 7th. Alright, back to the now. It's a few more weeks before those changes come to pass. Until then, we still have a live game to support. DPS has the need to know information for in-game bugs, errors, and more. Let's take a look at what they've been tracking this week. This is their report. Destiny 2 leaving Xbox Game Pass on December 8th. On December 8th, Destiny 2 and its expansions, so that's Forsaken, Shadowkeep, and Beyond Light, will leave Xbox Game Pass on console and cloud. Destiny 2 and current expansions will remain on Xbox Game Pass for PC. So it's just arrived on the PC. It's leaving the Xbox, so you can't play it on the console or the cloud. Those expansions, if that's how you own them. If you own those expansions, like if you bought those expansions on Xbox, they're not leaving. It's just leaving the Game Pass subscription service. Once Destiny 2 leaves Xbox Game Pass, players who don't own any of the expansions on the Xbox platform will lose access to campaign missions, expansion-specific activities, that's raids, dungeon hunts, exo challenges, nightfall strikes, and access to the Trials of Osiris. Stasis subclass, which is Beyond Light specific, the Middle Tree supers for each subclass, the 10% off perk for silver purchases, and other game add-ons. Items such as exotics already acquired will still be available for players who own them. Previously purchased season passes will remain active. Players who wish to continue playing Destiny 2 on Xbox should look for the Destiny 2 expansion discounts that will be available soon. Also, as a reminder, the Witch Queen will not be available on console or PC Xbox Game Pass when it launches. Xbox blocked players. Since cross-play launched earlier this season, we've seen Xbox players report see a lot of blocked players on the roster screen when they haven't blocked anyone. To help us in this investigation, please follow the steps below. Go to account.xbox.com/en-us/settings and log in. Click on your profile. Under privacy set, you can communicate outside of Xbox Live with voice and text to everyone. Set others can communicate with voice, text, or invites to everyone. Like Xbox Series X/XS/Xbox One and Windows 10 devices online safety towards the top. Set you can play with people outside of Xbox Live to allow. And then there's the console steps to also enable that. If you're still having troubles, please post in the thread, provide a video of screenshots on YouTube, Twitter, or mj.com. Blah, blah, blah. Known issues. Here's a list of the latest issues that were reported to us in our help forum. Sometimes revive time can reset during a grand master nightfall when players complete an objective or into a new area of a strike. Is that really the only known issue that's like been added? I swear there's a lot more than that. Alright, now we've got the movie of the week stuff. Tribute to the beauty of Destiny 2. Movie of the week. Here, hold this. We've got the art of the week. Taking Guardian. I hear a whisper. There's some incredible bloody art going around. Holy balls. Make sure to share and like that art, guys. It's always great stuff. Long twab. A lot of work. That's a hefty twab. That's a hefty twab. I'm really looking forward to December 7th. It's going to be huge. There's a lot of changes. There's going to be new content. It's a good time. Thank you very much. If you've got to the end of this video, I know it was a bit long and it might have been a bit boring, but who knows? If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. It will help me out immensely. I'd like to do more of these sorts of things, dissecting them and talking about the changes and, you know, my feelings and all that. Didn't really do much to talking in this one because it is now 5 in the morning. I need to get some sleep so I can get making more fresh content and playing more Destiny. Have a fantastic week. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.